Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason. How you doing?
Pretty good night tonight. Even though we've had a bunch of really hot days here, I'm beginning to realize summer is near its end.
Yeah, we're right on the cusp of the Labor Day long weekend, which is always kind of the last hurrah for big camping trip and long weekend summer plans and things like that. So it definitely feels like fall is just around the corner. But I don't really mind that because every August I get really itchy eyes and a really runny nose for some reason. And it always seems to clear up in September. So I'm kind of looking forward to turning the calendar next week.
The other thing I can tell is that when we're recording now, it's dark. In the summertime, it's still light outside. Now it's dark.
Yep. Apt observation, but definitely it's pitch black outside and it's not even 9:30 yet.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's get back to soccer. If you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
We focus on soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We discuss Cavalry FC and the Calgary Wild, which are the city's two professional soccer teams. But we also talk a lot about the university and college soccer teams, and we talk about players from Calgary who may be playing overseas or doing stuff like that. So all soccer, all Calgary. That's our mandate.
And this week, our topics are going to include previewing Cavalry FC, their match against Forge, previewing the Calgary Wild match. They're going to be in Toronto playing AFC Toronto. We're going to do some post-secondary previews. In U Sports, the men's side are going to be playing this weekend, and women's side will have their first matches. And we have an interview this week.
Yeah, actually, it was almost a week ago. We interviewed Bori Falaye, who is originally from Calgary, grew up playing for lots of different clubs in the city, spent 2 years with the University of Calgary Dinos, but ended up going over to Europe after his second year to pursue a professional career. He played with a couple of different clubs in the semi-pro and lower pro level leagues in Germany, and he just made a move to Albania to a club in that country's capital, Tirana. So he's now playing for a club called KF Tirana, which is a really big club in Albanian football. So that's an exciting move for him. And Jason, I was watching some YouTube videos about that club, and they get some pretty rowdy crowds when they play their rivals.
Apparently, one of the intercity matchups is a really well-known derby and is like even within the scope of Europe, it's considered a pretty big-time derby.
Yeah, so we talked to him about his career and what it's been like to move to a new country once again and get used to the language barrier and adapt to being a professional soccer player. So we'll run that interview in a few minutes, but how about we kick things off with our preview of Cavalry's match against Forge this weekend.
Hi, this is Ali Musi, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. Spruce Meadows, Cavalry FC will be playing Forge. And this is a big match, isn't it? Forge is having quite the year.
Yeah, that'd be an understatement. I mean, Forge is unbeaten, believe it or not, in the 2025 season. After 20 games, they have 13 wins, 7 draws, and 0 losses. So they are understandably at the top of the table and have a pretty healthy lead over the second place team, which is Atletico Ottawa. However, we know that every time Forge and Cavalry take each other on, it doesn't really seem to matter what's happening in the standings. These are always, fireworks. Like, these are always big games. These two teams have been rivals since the inaugural CPL season. So I never want to miss a Cavalry versus Forge game because they always seem to deliver.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you look back, both teams have consistently been on the top end of the table every year, and the coaches are very familiar with each other. And I think it's a really interesting chess match sometimes because what can they pull out that, the other one hasn't seen before? It's a real game of strategy. And I think from that standpoint, and Cavalry is going to be very motivated because I'm sure they would like nothing more than to dash Forge's hopes of an invincible season.
Absolutely. And, there's so many different things to talk about with regards to this match. One I like to mention, pointed out by Mitchell Tierney in an article this week, Forge is chasing their 7th consecutive win in the CPL. That would tie a record that Cavalry set for the most wins in a row way back in 2019. So Forge will be very keen to tie that record and eventually surpass it. Cavalry will want more than anything to hold on to that record by spoiling Forge's not just that run, but as you mentioned, the hopes of an invincible, unbeaten season. But, Cavalry, they haven't been at their best this year. They've definitely looked great in moments, but they've had a couple of slumps, including at the beginning of the season in April and, of course, more recently this summer. In terms of their last several home matches against Forge, they actually have a really strong overall record.
The stats you pulled up here talks about Cavalry's only lost once in their past 8 home matches against Forge in all competitions. That's pretty good.
Pretty good when you consider how strong Forge has been. And yeah, I stole that stat from Mitchell Tierney's article, but it won't be easy, of course. Forge is really playing well this year. They lead the league in, I think, goals as well as clean sheets and fewest goals against. And they've also been really strong on the road. They actually have gotten 6 clean sheets from their 10 away games this season. And in those 10 games, they've only let in 5 goals. So they seem to be even stronger defensively when they travel than when they play in Hamilton.
This is the same keeper that played the end of last year for them, right?
Jas Kalele. Yeah, I know that he wasn't starting at the beginning of last year. I think that was Chris Kalongo, but he seemed to overtake Kalongo as the starting goalkeeper. And yeah, he's having a really good season, leading the CPL in clean sheets. And I think he's duking it out with Nate Ingham for the Goalkeeper of the Year award. But not going to be easy to score on Saturday for Cavalry. And I wouldn't predict a high-scoring game like we've maybe gotten used to in the last few Cavalry games.
Yeah, I would think this is going to probably be a pretty cagey match, but should be a good one. Like you said, these two teams don't disappoint. So, and people that don't have One Soccer, this one's actually going to be on TSN.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Hunter, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So Cavalry's game against Forge will be the only pro soccer game happening in Calgary this weekend. The Wilds, as you mentioned at the top, Jason, will be on the road as they face NSL leaders AFC Toronto, a team that they have not gotten any points against yet in 2025. A team that has started to build a little bit of room at the top of the NSL standings.
You look at Toronto and I think by any measure, they've had a really good inaugural season. They've been, winning matches. They're at the top of the table. They're scoring goals. This one stat you pulled out, I thought was really interesting, that AFC Toronto has outscored Calgary, for example, 26-17 across the season. It's a pretty sizable difference. That's what's half a goal a game, isn't it? Close to it.
Pretty much. We're 18 or 17 games into the season. And yeah, it's telling that Calgary really only averages 1 goal a game and Toronto closer to 2 goals a game. But we've talked about their offense before, right? Like they have some dangerous weapons up front. I think it's the biggest strength of theirs is their attacking core. And that has been led by a Calgarian who is still just, 18, if even?
I think she's probably still 17. I'd have to check, but I don't think she's 18 yet.
Yeah, but that, of course, is Kaylee Hunter. She's logged 10 goals for AFC Toronto this year. Some have been really nice as well. And she's also second in the league with shots on target with 22. So she's creating a lot of chances, and she'll probably want to put one past Calgary again this weekend.
For sure. And I did want to mention that the other Calgarian who was loaned out to AFC Toronto, Maya Jones, we know she's been injured. We've talked about her injury in a relatively recent episode. I did see maybe a week or so ago, maybe it's been 2 weeks now, that she just had surgery. So there's a bunch of pictures she posted on her Instagram being at the hospital. And I think it's safe to assume that she won't be back this year. And after what she had revealed about her injury, I don't think that's a surprise. And I just, hopefully she can get back to, a good level of health and give 2026 a good go.
So in terms of Calgary's chances this weekend, now every game that they've played against Toronto this year has, interestingly enough, ended in a 2-1 win for AFC Toronto. Jason, we talked in our most recent episode recapping last weekend's action that the Calgary Wild are once again really hurting this week in terms of the amount of players who are out injured. It's quite alarming.
I'm going to read them off to you. Kaylee Books, Miko Rolfsma, Farkunda Mataj, Tilly James, Callie Johnson, Janaea Robertson, Jackie Burns, Sarah Kelty Dilling, Tegan Stewart. I think that's it. 9
players out injured. So we saw last weekend Calgary, they didn't even have a backup goalkeeper to bring with them to Montreal. So they had to recruit a youth player from Montreal. I'm not sure if they'll be doing that again this week, but I guess, they made that new goalkeeper signing, Gladu. So maybe she'll be on the bench. But yeah, it's a tough job for Lydia Bedford this weekend, taking on the league's best team with more than a third of your roster out injured.
I don't know how close any of these players are to coming back. I was kind of under the impression that we might see some of them back soon, but I don't know who and I don't know how quickly. But even to have a couple of them back would probably make a pretty big difference in this match.
Hi, this is Aislinn Phillips, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So, more U Sports action this weekend, but compared to last weekend when, there were 2 games taking place in Calgary, doesn't look like any of the U Sports teams will be in action at home this weekend. On the men's side, we've got Mount Royal University traveling to take on the Saskatchewan Huskies, and the University of Calgary Dinos heading south to face University of Lethbridge. And then on the women's side, we've got the Dinos traveling east to take on University of Regina in their 2025 season opener. And we've got men also playing in Saskatchewan against the Huskies on Saturday, and then switching opponents a bit on Sunday.
So we're going to have a chance to see the Cougars and the Dinos on the women's teams for the first time this season off in Saskatchewan. But I pulled up the rosters here for this season, and it was kind of interesting to look at them. I noticed a couple things, and I think we briefly talked about it before we hit the record button. But what are your thoughts about these rosters?
There is so much continuity on this Dinos team. I mean, that is the first thing that jumped out. I mean, some of these names I feel like we've been talking about since we started this podcast, right? Like Sophia Di Giacomo. I think she missed the entirety of last season for the Dinos after a serious knee injury in the 2024 League One Alberta season. But I mean, these names all seem familiar, right? Like Lauren Houghton somehow still playing. Grace Moore, I believe she had a really strong season, lots of goals last year. McKenna Walker from Airdrie, she's still on the team. Ashlyn Phillips, Katie French, Isabella De Palma, Brooklyn Colvin, Jaden Berg, so many names that I think we've been seeing connected to either the Dinos or Blizzard's League One team for the last few years.
This Dinos team they're in a very good position to make a big run. At the beginning of every year, the Canada West, they do a coaches poll for ranking the teams. And big surprise, UBC, the perennial dominant team, they're still at the top, but the Dinos are at number 2. And I understand that the Dinos even got 1 first place vote in the polls. So, they're definitely considered, to be one of the heavyweights in Canada West this season. Mount Royal Cougars, by the way, are ranked 10th in this poll.
Yeah, on the Dino side, like last year, I think they were really hoping for a national push, and they ended up finishing 4th in Canada West playoffs. And I think that was a big disappointment because they just missed out on a trip to nationals. And they've done that trip a couple of times, but I don't think they've been able to actually win the Canada West title in the last few years. But looking at MRU's roster, and Jason, I think it's an exciting year for Mount Royal because I think for the last 2 seasons, they've had to play in the Pacific Division against teams from BC. But this year, it appears that they are back in the Prairie Division against teams from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And I think their chances of a decent finish are much higher in the Prairie Division, which is historically a little bit weaker. Compared to the Dinos, in terms of continuity, there's not nearly as much.
Yeah, there are definitely some familiar names, but not quite as familiar as compared to the Dinos. But there's definitely players that we're familiar with. Someone like Kyla Franks and the Jurisic sisters, Natalia and Tamara. Sophie Kinghorn. These are players that have been around for a while, and so it's not just a bunch of rookies for sure. But yeah, there's a few more names on here that I'm not as familiar with on my end at least.
Mm-hmm. I think a really important player for the Cougars is their captain, who's Isabella Chirico. She's a defender. This is her 5th year with the Cougars, so last season with the team. So she'll be one that they really lean on for leadership, because looking at their season preview on the MRU Cougars website, it does look like they've added 6 players to the roster, and they've seen 8 departures. So lots of roster additions and departures, but you know what? We saw that on the men's team, and they're doing pretty well so far with a 2-0 record. So I think the Cougars will be happy to be back in the Prairie Division, and I'm keen to see how they fare against more local opposition than they've been playing for the last few years.
Yeah, it's the reason the Cougars are back in the Prairie Division, it's kind of a bit of a sad reason, I guess, in a way, but the University of Winnipeg, they discontinued their women's soccer program. So to address the imbalance, the Cougars came back, so they get a chance to play on the prairies as opposed to all their games on the coast.
Hi, this is Oluwabori Falaye, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So as we mentioned, our interview this week was with Bori Falaye. Jason, he's a player who I've kind of followed his career sporadically over the last decade or so, because I was still at the University of Calgary or had just left recently when he kind of burst onto the scene and earned a Rookie of the Season award in Canada West. And despite being a freshman, I think he was one of the best players on the Dinos. And then the next year as a sophomore, he was even better. He was scoring a buttload of goals. And then it just, after a while, he kind of disappeared, and I wasn't sure what had happened to him. And turns out he'd been playing professionally in Germany. So kind of kept an eye on things every once in a while. And he's one that we've wanted to get on the podcast for a while. So it's good to finally chat with him. I don't know of many Canadian players, if any, who have gone over to Albania, but it'll definitely be an adventure. And, he's already made his debut for KF Tirana. So that's now another team that we can kind of keep an eye on to see if he's getting much playing time. But we may as well run that interview now, and listeners can hear from Bori about his new club and his new country. I'd like to welcome Bori Falaye to the podcast. Bori is playing professionally over in Albania at the moment with KF Tirana, but he grew up in Calgary, and I also know that he played 2 seasons with the University of Calgary Dinos before moving over to Europe to embark on his pro soccer career. Bori, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we like to always start these interviews by asking our guests for kind of like a rundown of their career. I know you've played in Germany before going to Albania, but can you kind of tell our listeners like which clubs you played for in Calgary, and then how it came to be that you became a professional footballer?
So I started playing competitive football maybe at 9 years old, and I played at a community team, and then I played for Calgary West. Then after Calgary West, I went to NSD for 1 year before they dissolved. And then after, I went to Southwest United, and I finished my youth career there. And then I had the 2 seasons at Dinos. Then I officially moved to Europe to pursue playing professionally. Before I started going when I was 16, so I went for some trials and stuff like that. And it went well, but then I had 1 more year left of school, so then I went back again after in my last year of school, and then a whole bunch of stuff happened, and I ended up at Dinos, and then I spent 2 seasons before moving to Europe. And in Europe, I've played for a few teams. I played for the main ones I played for is I played for Estoril Praia in Portugal. I played for Albania Aachen in Germany. I played for FSV Frankfurt, TSV Albstadt for a short time, and then now KF Tirana in Albania.
How did the opportunity come up to go play for Tirana and go to Albania?
I think my personal perspective is just like, it was just like a God thing. I have to thank God for that because I played with a teammate in Frankfurt. He's British, actually. So he grew up in England and he was like, I stayed with him like when I first moved to Frankfurt for like a few months. Then I went into my own place, but we were very good friends. And in the summer, I came back to Europe because I hadn't played the second half of last season. So I came because I was like, I'm naturally going to have to do trials most likely again, because if you don't play for 6 months, then sometimes it's difficult to like sign directly. So I was training with him and then he recommended a coach for me, like in my area, because traveling around London is a bit, it's a bit difficult with the training and everything. So one of his former coaches who coached him at Crystal Palace, coached at Charlton Athletic and I think AC Milan as well. He was like running this kind of like program to like, help players and things like that. And it was really close to where I was staying. So I reached out to him and he's like, yeah, for sure that I should come through. So I came and I trained with him and he was just like, saying like, yes, you're like a very good player, you have good qualities. And he asked a bit about like my background, where I was coming from. And he decided to speak to one of his friends for me, which is an agent. He's like big in like, he does stuff in England and like the Balkan regions, Albania, Greece, Cyprus. And then he also does stuff in Italy as well, just all over. So he contacted me about Albania and he just told me about like the level here and like the potential here, playing here, like in terms of where other markets source their players from and things like that. Yeah, the agent called me and he said like, the club's interested in you, they want to see you. So I went over there and I trained and then I signed. So
we noticed that Tirana's first game of the season was yesterday and you did get subbed in. So what are your first impressions of Albanian football and how did it feel to play your first match for your new club?
Albanian football is very, very like physical. It's similar to Germany in that regard. It's very physical. And I think here that there are a lot of like experienced players who've played in other parts of Europe at very good levels. So they bring that experience with them into the game. Yeah. And I'd say it's tactical as well, but it's not so much as tactical as like a place like Germany, I would say. But it's a good standard of football. I'm enjoying it so far. And it was I'm very thankful to come in yesterday. So it's a blessing to play some minutes and, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
I looked up, like YouTubed your new club and I noticed when it's the derby, when Tirana plays another team from Tirana, I can't remember if it was Partizani or something.
Partizani, yeah, it's Partizani.
But like the atmosphere was crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I imagine like looking forward to that match, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Albanians love their football and they're very passionate about their clubs. So like Tirana is like a very historical club. They've won 6 championships, I believe. And there's a lot of like expectation from the fans, and Partizani is also a big club. So when they come together, everyone tells me, like my agent was telling me, he's like, look, like the week before the derby, like people are going to be stopping you in the street and like telling you like you have to win, things like that. And he's like, if you win, then everything's good. If you don't win, then you can't go outside for a bit. So yeah, I heard the atmosphere is good, and the club has a great fan base anyway. So even at the game, like the amount of away fans that came, it was pretty like maybe like 2.5 hours away, and the amount of away fans that came was like good. So
I believe last year the club had a bit of a down year. They were, I think, in 7th or 8th place, and it is a pretty storied club, as you're talking about. I know you weren't there before; you just got there, but does it feel like there's a lot of pressure to improve on last year?
Definitely, yeah. I heard that last year wasn't the best year for sure. I think they also played Conference League qualifiers at the beginning of the season, but then were eliminated, and then the season didn't go well. So from what I've heard from the boys, it's like the club of the standard has certain expectations. So there's always going to be that pressure to like get to a certain position, and also with the nature of the club, the history of the club, the culture here, it's like a winning culture. So they want us to win and everything. So I think that just comes with it, and it's always going to be there.
I wanted to ask if you've experienced much culture or language shock moving to Albania from Germany. Any difficulties in that regard?
The language is it's different to anything like I've experienced. I feel like I'm picking it up a little bit, just a little bit. Yeah, it's completely different. Culture-wise, the people here are generally nice. They're very like direct, and they can be very, I don't know how to put it, like passionate, but they're very like forward in everything they do, even in their driving. Driving here is the different beast, but yeah, I don't know any culture shock necessarily, not really. I feel like I've been a lot of different places, but the language I would say is the main thing.
Could you really like describe your playing style? I know you usually play up front.
I don't know. I played up front a lot in Germany, but I think that was more so because of the systems that I played in. Like playing with two strikers versus one striker is different. So it's like a 4-4-2, then I would play up front, or 3-5-2, but in like a 4-3-3 or something, I would prefer to play like out wide. I'm a player who I like to be on the ball. I like to have the ball at my feet a lot, and I like to take players on 1v1. I'm good technically, and I'm fast and I'm strong, and I just try and bring that into the game. My goal is always to just be as direct as possible and get to the goal as quickly as possible. So,
Bori, I want to ask you about playing in Germany because as we were kind of talking about before we hit the record button, I love German football, big Bundesliga fan. Some of the teams that you played for, like Alemannia Aachen, is it FSV Frankfurt?
yeah,
Yeah. Can you talk about how playing in Germany at the professional level kind of modeled you as a player and how it kind of helped in your progression?
for sure. I think like German football is very much like their culture. It's very disciplined and very structured. So and it's very team oriented. So it's not so much as individual as like somewhere like Portugal or Spain. But yeah, I think that it helped me to learn football tactics a lot better, because I think one thing that is lacking in Canada, and maybe it's changing now because they're playing 11v11 more often. But when I was growing up, we would play like futsal or indoor for half the year, and then we play outdoor for the other half of the year. And while that's very good for like technical development and things like that, I feel like you lose out on a lot of what real football is, which is like the mental aspect and the understanding of the game. And that's where there's a lot of like differences. So I feel like coming to an environment like Germany helped me in that aspect, where I need to be on the pitch, how to defend. And also it's a very like hardworking type of football. So you have to like work hard, you have to run, you have to defend. Everyone has to do that. Whereas other places you can get away with not doing so much defending, so on and so forth. So I think it really helped me in that aspect. That's what I would say. Even in Regionalliga is like professional, but it's fourth league in Germany. But you still have like a lot of things that you get in terms of quality. Firstly, it's very good compared to other leagues, other countries. It's higher up on the football pyramid than other countries. But then you have also things like atmosphere. Like when I played at Aachen, like the fans, we play in front of sometimes like 13, 14,000 people. Like I remember the season, I think 1 or 2 seasons after I left, they averaged 26,000 attendance. And this is like in the fourth league in Germany. So you have like this atmosphere, this culture that you don't experience in like first league in certain countries. So, but that's part of what makes football. So it helps prepare you in that aspect.
Have you followed the Canadian Premier League much while you've been over in Europe? Like it pretty much started up right around the time you left for Europe. So I'm how much have you paid attention to it?
I've paid attention to it because I have friends who play in the league. So yeah, I've kept an eye on it like now and then. I wouldn't say like I don't like watch games actively, because I think it's only like on one soccer and also the time difference. But I've kept up with it because, like I said, my friends are in the league, and obviously on Instagram, I'm going to see someone's nominated player of the game or the team wins, and I'm going to see stuff, especially mostly from Cavalry.
But is there anything else that you'd like to mention or highlight before we end this chat? And obviously, you're playing in Albania at the moment. Is there any way that people can follow along or maybe even catch a game online or something like that?
I know all the games are televised here. I'm completely new, so I don't have all the information yet.
No.
I guess if people want to follow, they can follow the page, the team's page on Instagram. Also, me personally, I know that you can watch the games because they're all streamed, they're all televised, but I don't know where yet. But as soon as I find out, I can tell you.
There's just been the one game so far, but Bori, we always like to keep tabs on how players from Calgary are doing overseas. So, like I said before, it's been great chatting with you, and thanks for coming on our podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thanks to Bori for taking the time to do the interview with us. And after we did the interview, I did a little bit of digging around to see where you could find Albanian League soccer to watch in Canada. And all of the matches from the Albanian League are available on FIFA Plus, which is, a free app, which you can download on your phone or watch on your computer. And I even tried to tune in and to watch his debut in that match last week, and I was able to find it. That's how you watch it if you're interested.
Yeah, FIFA Plus is a dangerous app. It's the kind of website that you can spend 2 hours on and not even think about it, and then you're like, holy crap, where'd those last 2 hours go? But yeah, good to know that, and I'll definitely be trying to catch an appearance or two.
Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links there so you can buy Scott's book. It's called Here Come the Cavalry, and it chronicles Calgary's pro soccer history. You can leave us a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media such as Twitter or Instagram or Blue Sky, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.